السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أفضل الخلق وسيد المرسلين، سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We are talking about some beautiful inspirational stories from the life of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the way I've chosen to do this is to kind of go chronologically through the Seerah to a certain extent and share with you stories at different points in time and interactions that he had with people around him. His people, whether they were the believers or they were the unbelievers, and that really highlight and show the beautiful character of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so much that we have as individuals to take from that reality. Alhamdulillah. And so today I want to talk to you about an exchange that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he had with one of the kuffar, one of the chiefs of the Quraish in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alhamdulillah, excuse me. And this man, his name was Utbah ibn Rabi'a. And like I said, he was one of the chiefs of the Quraysh, and they tried during the time of the Prophet ﷺ while he was in Mecca. They tried so many different ways to dissuade, persuade, influence, detract, insult, harm, persecute physically. All of these different methods that they use to really pull the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam off of his track and trying to detract him from spreading the message of Islam. And that in and of itself is a great lesson and moral that we need to take from the life of the Prophet ﷺ, is that they threw everything they possibly could at him, but there was nothing that ever stopped the Prophet ﷺ from carrying forth the da'wah. So this exchange went like this. This man, Utbah, he comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he wants to try to appeal to him in a certain way. And he says to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Oh, my nephew." He's not his actual nephew, but in the sense of that he's an elder, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is younger. Excuse me one second. Excuse me. Alhamdulillah, allergies are really bad this season. So he comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, "Oh, my nephew," he says that, amongst our people, you have caused a great strife. You have broken up our unity. You have, caused our people to be disunited. You have insulted our intellects. You have insulted our gods. You have insulted our way of life. You have disbelieved in your forefathers that have come before you. You have done all of these things." And he says to him, Utbah says to the Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Oh Muhammad, are you better, or is Abdullah?" Abdullah meaning his father. And then he says, "Are you better?" And the Prophet ﷺ, he remained quiet. He didn't respond. And then he says to him, "Are you better, or anta khair am Abdul Muttalib? Are you better, or your grandfather, Abdul Muttalib?" And the Prophet ﷺ, he remains quiet. And then Utbah, he says, "If you claim that these people are better than you, they used to worship our gods. They used to worship idols. And if you claim that you are better, then speak and I will listen to you." Right? If you claim that you're better than your forefathers, speak and I will listen to you. And he says, because I've never seen a person that has been brought more disgrace on his people than you, and no one that has ever disunited his people like you have, and so on. And um, then he says, so listen to me. Utbah, after he insults the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and after he puts him in this bad light, then he says, then listen to me. I'm going to present you with some matters. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, go ahead, I am listening. قل أبا الوليد أسمع. He says, go ahead and speak, I'm listening. And Utbah, he says, if you want from what you are preaching, if you are seeking wealth, if you are seeking money, then we will gather as much wealth as we can and make you the richest amongst us. And if you are looking for honor, then we will put you, we will make you our leader, and no one will, and you will have the final word in all matters. If you are looking for power, then we will make you a king over us. And if you are, if you are looking for whatever it is you're looking for, we will give you. That's the essence of what he's telling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then when Utbah is done, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to him, "Aqad faraqta Aba al-Walid." He says, "Have you finished, O Utbah?" And Utbah, he says, "Yes." And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Listen to me." And Utbah, he says, "I will." So I just want to take a little pause here. I'm going to relate this whole incident, and then I'm going to draw the lessons from the incident. So I want you to understand the incident very clear, because it tells you a lot of a lot of the characteristics of our beloved Prophet ﷺ. There's some very very nuanced things that if we listen to them, you see the beautiful character in which the Prophet ﷺ displays in this very difficult sort of exchange. So the Prophet ﷺ, he starts reading Quran. He reads Surah Fussilat, which starts Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Hamim, Tanzilum Minar Rahmanir Rahim, Kitabun Fussilat Ayatuhu Qur'anan Arabiyyan liqawmin ya'lamun. And he continues. He reads about 4 pages of Surah Fussilat, 4 pages that are in our hands now. And he reads all the way, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he reads all the way to, like I said, to 4 pages down to a place where there is a sajda. In the midst of while the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's reading, he comes to the ayah that says, فَقُلْ أَنذَرْتُكُمْ صَاعِقَةً مِثْلَ صَاعِقَةِ عَادٍ وَثَمُودٍ. And the Prophet ﷺ, he comes to an ayah that says, and I am warning you of a strike that will come like the strike that came to Ad, the people of Ad, and the people of Thamud. And of course, the history of these two people, Ad and Thamud, was known amongst the Arab. And when he says that, Abu Walid, Utbah, he goes by both names, he gets very scared and he says, "That's enough. Yeah, that's enough. Oh Muhammad, that's enough. I urge you to stop." And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he continues reading, and he, like I said, he reads until he reaches the place of sajda. So subhanallah, he engages Utbah by reading the Quran, and the story continues. Utbah goes to his people. He goes back to his people. He actually doesn't go back to them, and they think that he's been taken by the Prophet ﷺ, meaning moved by his words, and perhaps came and accepted Islam. And there's a long exchange, and Utbah, he says these interesting words. Excuse me one second. Sorry. He says these amazing words. He says, Wallahi, ma sami'at mithla. He says, I swear I have never heard anything like these words. He's going back and telling his people, the Quraysh, about this exchange that they were all curious. What happened? What happened? And he says, it's not poetry, it's not magic, it's not some sort of soothsaying, fortune telling. They had all of these different things they used to discount the Prophet ﷺ with. And he says, oh Quraysh, he says, obey me and let's leave this man alone. Let us leave this man alone, because if what he is preaching reaches the rest of the Arabs, then they will follow him, and his power will be your power, and his honor will be your honor. Leave him be. And he says, I have heard words from this man that I have never heard before. And there's a long exchange. And bottom line, he was very, very deeply affected by hearing the Quran from the Prophet ﷺ. So what are some lessons that we learn from this exchange, and what is beautiful about this exchange that we see with the Prophet ﷺ, with the Utbah? You have to pay attention and really to extract this. So number one, the Prophet ﷺ, there was no compromise, right? This was the MO of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, especially in the Meccan period, that they constantly tried to get him to bend, to lean, to give up, to sacrifice, to compromise. The Prophet ﷺ never gave in to any of that. He always stayed firm on. We convey the message of Islam. We don't sugarcoat, we don't dilly-dally, we don't try to things in a way that are going to compromise the core of what Islam says. Right? We can frame things in different ways to speak to different mindsets, to speak to different people, and to spark their interest as it relates to Islam, but we don't change any of the truth of the message. Secondly, that the Quran is the guiding light of the Prophet ﷺ. And it's very interesting when you look at the Meccan period, that you don't find that many exchanges of the Prophet ﷺ. You don't find his conversations detailed. You find a lot of conversations of the disbelievers, of those that came into Islam and their stories, but you don't find many of the words of the Prophet ﷺ related, recorded, his conversations, because this was early on in the time of Mecca. Not as many companions were there to later relate those words. You hear about all of the events in Mecca. But the other reason for that is because the Prophet ﷺ, he spoke with the Quran. The Quran was the way in which he responded to people, was the way in which he conveyed the message of Islam. He didn't fill it in with his own words and his own philosophy and explanation of the Quran. He recited the Quran, and it spoke for itself. It was clear as day. And so that is another important lesson for us. The Quran should be our microphone, should be our megaphone. It should be the way in which we convey the message of Islam to whoever that may be, our family, our friends, and so on. We should be very familiar with the Quran for that to even be a reality. So the Prophet ﷺ, he spoke with the Quran. That was his primary communication, as in terms of what we find in the Seerah in the Meccan period. Another thing that we learn from this is the beautiful listening skills and communication skills of the Prophet ﷺ. Notice the Prophet ﷺ, when Utbah, he asked this question, are you better or your father or your grandfather? The Prophet, he remains silent. He doesn't say anything. There's no need to say anything. That's not a question to be asked. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. And when the ignorant people speak, say salam. It's nothing to speak. We don't engage in senseless and useless conversation, because it will only drag you down. If you see what somebody else's intention is and it's not a good intention, there's no need to engage. So the Prophet ﷺ, he displays that. And then the other thing, he also gave this man the full ability to say what he wanted to say. And then he asked him, are you done? In a very polite manner. And that should be also our way of communicating with others, not waiting for the moment they stop speaking so that we can say what we want to say. Right? And that means, if that's the way that means we're not listening. That means we are just waiting to talk. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ asked him, "Are you done?" And then he speaks. And the last lesson that I want to just talk about here is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's not swayed by the negative speech. You notice when Utbah, when he spoke earlier, he insulted the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in so many different ways, and then he said, "I'm going to present you with the matter." You don't talk to people that way. But the Prophet ﷺ, he endured it with patience, and he listened to him all the way, and he didn't let it rile up his emotions. Right? Oftentimes when people speak to us and they insult us, they speak down to us, they badmouth us, whatever it may be, we get emotionally riled up by then, and at that point we can't even listen or think, and let alone communicate back at that point. So he was able to just soak it in, because he has something bigger to convey. And even in our normal mundane lives, or even with our interactions with our family members or loved ones, maybe we do get abused, maybe we do get put down by people. And it's important for us to find a way, if we know that's coming. A lot of times we already know that's coming, just to find a way to let it come in one ear and perhaps go out the other if there's no value in that, or just to soak it in, but not try to take all of the emotion that may come with that, so that we can further that conversation. So these are some beautiful lessons that we extract from this beautiful exchange of the Prophet ﷺ. Even though it was a very harsh exchange, but the Prophet ﷺ, he still is able to convey the beautiful message of Islam, and we have to also learn to try to embody this in our lives. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.